ready? Great. Look at the audience. Hi, welcome, welcome. My name is Shelley Sim, and I am the acting mayor for tonight's meeting. Mayor Blackwell gives his regrets. I believe he is stranded in an airport on Vancouver Island somewhere, waiting for the airlines to help him get on his way. Just before we start, I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we are fortunate to be gathering together on the unceded territory of the Secwepemc, who have been caretakers of this land since time immemorial, and what a beautiful, beautiful part of the world we get to live in. Moving on to item number 3. Oh, actually, I have something to say before that. The thing about being on council or doing anything is that it's really scary. And you take a chance and you put your name and you throw your hat into the arena. And sometimes you get it right and sometimes you don't get it right. And so I just want to read a quote. You'll know us as the famous quote, "The Man in the Arena" by President Roosevelt. And I'm just going to read it. And it's not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again. Because there is no effort without error and shortcoming, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who is at best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least he fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat. And I wanted to share that is because I hope that we ask courageous questions, I hope that we're bold, and I hope that we have the courage to make decisions and speak up and speak our mind, because I believe that each and every one of us who sit around this table have chosen to do so to serve our community valiantly. So I want to thank you for that, and just thank you for indulging me on that. Okay. Item number 3, introduction of late items. So, Councillor Herring, I believe you've got a late item to add.
Right, I'd like to add an item to our in-camera agenda covered under section 91A of the Community Charter.
Great. Yeah, that is. Thank you very much. And I'll look to the table of our fabulous staff. Is there anything that you would like to add?
16.8, official community plan, and that's all.
That's all. Great. And I'm going to add 2 under also the in-camera, under the community charter for sections A and E. So we'll have 3 additions for the in-camera. So with that, if I could get an adoption of the agenda.
Sorry, what's the ones you're adding in camera?
A and E, please.
Thank you.
Great. All right, I think we're now ready for the adoption of the agenda. Moved by Councillor Herring, seconded by Councillor Mackenzie. All in favor? Great, we have an agenda. All right, looking good. We're going to move to 4.1, and there is a recommendation. Can I have somebody put that forward?
That was it.
Right, thanks. I have Councillor Frizzle on my left, who is my guiding light today. Can I ask if there's any declaration of conflict from council members?
None here.
None here? Great. I'm also noticing, we did wonder if Councillor Matheson might be joining us. He's at an economic development summit. Is he online by chance? Okay, I think
No
he's
one's
just...
online yet.
Pardon?
Nobody's online at this time.
No one is online yet. All right, so Councillor Matheson is out of district attending that conference, which is great. So we don't have our TNRD area director with us, no?
Nope, no one else is signed up.
Okay, lovely. And so now that moves us to a great part of the agenda, delegations, the Wells Grey Writers Circle poetry reading, Miley Bell. Come on up. Yeah. But first of all, Is this your dad?
Yes.
Do you want to come in front and take a photo?
You can come right here if you want to.
Yeah.
I was just gonna stay out of the way and do it from here.
Okay. No, that's fine. Miley, thank you for joining us. We're keen to hear from you.
Thank you for having me. It took me a while to find a piece from my book that just came out that I haven't performed yet, but I was able to find one. It's called Beautiful Mistake. I want someone to make beautiful mistakes with. Silly little things that don't mean much. Staying out past curfew and getting in trouble because of it, but it's worth it because of the memories we're making. Someone to be reckless and impulsive with, because where you go, I'll follow, and I need someone to help me out of my comfort zone. Let's be stupid teens, dumb and in love. We both know the odds are against us, but we're still gonna try. We will be fireworks or the shooting stars, only to end up exploding in the sky. Young love may be stupid and harsh, it may be asking for heartbreak, but it's beautiful. It is bright and warm, and if it's a mistake, so be it, because it's a beautiful mistake to make.
Oh, Miley, thank you. Miley, tell us a bit about your book. That sounds exciting.
It is 21 poems about just everything in life. In the past 2 years, I've moved from Ottawa to Clearwater. I've lost my uncle. I've had so many big changes that writing has always sort of been my outlet, and I decided it was time to start publishing some of my work. And I'm currently in the process of writing a second book as well.
Wow, good for you.
Well, Miley, if we go back to, the man in the arena, those who are daring greatly, I think that you define that.
Thank you.
It's really nice. And I hear that you've also been performing at the coffee houses. Is that
Yes,
right?
I have been.
And you've been taking the audiences by storm. So, and what grade are you at?
I'm in grade 10.
Grade 10. So we get to have you in Clearwater for another 2 years, hopefully.
Yes, part of next year only. I'm traveling a bit.
Good for you. I have a sense that you are probably going to travel to the stars and back.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anyway, one more round of applause. Thank you very much for setting the tone. It seems the theme of the evening is courage. Daring greatly. And to quote my friend Heather Grieve, who's the chair of SD 73, we would love to have you, but you are more than welcome to say your goodbyes. So no obligation. Thank you again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thank you for
done.
bringing her.
Thank you. Have a nice evening.
Thanks. I think that this is a great month for that, right? Yeah.
What, last month, or last week, couple of weeks, and now this one, that's excellent.
All right, so now we're going to move to the adoption of the minutes of the last meeting. Yes, you can. Councillor Bratton is recommending that the minutes of the regular council meeting held on April 4th be adopted and presented. No amendments? Okay, and seconded by Councillor Herring. All in favor? Great. I am going to need some assistance from staff. We have a lot of adoptions from the cemetery committee. They have been doing some really, really great work. And it just shows by the number of meetings and how that's been something that council has been wanting to do for several years, and the fact that it's there. So do we need to make the recommendation for each set of minutes, or is there a way to tidy them all in one?
We could do one.
All right. So I would say, if anybody wanted to, that the recommendations for the minutes of the select committee from February 9th, and maybe just list each dates if somebody would like to make that.
I
Councillor
move
Frizzle.
that the minutes of the Select Committee Cemetery Operations meeting held on February 9th, March 2022, March 9th, 2022, April 13th, 2022, June 28th, 2022, and July 26th, 2022 be received.
Great. Seconded by
I'll second that.
Councillor McKenzie. Great. All in favor? Super. Thank you. Do we have a council person who sits on that committee? Yeah. Thank you very much for doing that. It's I'm late in the game. Yeah. Thank you. Is there anything you wanted to share about the cemetery committee to date, or?
I don't have a lot to share. We're still in the formulation of the bylaw. It's coming closer to, and I think we see an end in sight. So another couple months, and it should be closer to fruition. Go ahead, Nelson.
Sorry, no, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh.
I just, sorry.
Okay. Yeah, that's about
Great.
all I can
Thank
say.
you very
Yeah.
much. All right. All those in favor?
And Acting Mayor Sim, there will be about another 2 meetings worth of these to come through. We're just sort of clearing up old backlog, some of the other committees as well. So prepare for them for next time.
Okay, lovely. Thank you for that. All right, and then I have 9.6, and this is the District of Clearwater Wales Grey Community Forest Commission meeting minutes. Motion?
Move it.
Moved by Councillor Frizzle, seconded by Councillor Bratton. Any discussion on those? Great. All those in favor? Motion carries. Okay, so that's 2 pages down, you guys.
Oh, you don't have us fooled.
All right, moving on. I believe we are at item 11. Is that right? Do I have this right? Yep. Great. Reconsideration of tabled items and anything there? I don't see anything.
Believe so. No.
Great, and I don't see anything under reconsideration of deferred items. We have no public and statutory hearings. The mayor has extended his regrets for this evening, so we don't have anything from here. So we will move to Councillor Herring.
Okay, so I guess 2 weeks ago now, I attended the Housing Summit down in Vancouver. Super exciting. The big takeaway for me was actually how much I learned from listening to the other communities in the province. There's so many different ways of doing things out there. You know, I've been talking about DCCs a long time, and we heard from Port Hardy that they don't do DCCs, which is super exciting. And we heard from other communities that their DCCs are much higher than ours, and they're doing fine, and it's part of their plan. So there's multiple ways to approach it. One of the things that came up that was really interesting to me was community amenity contributions, which is a separate mechanism of seeking funds from developers. It's sort of a way to do more specific asks around community amenities. So an example in a big city context might be someone builds a skyscraper and they say, well, that's 200 new units. That's going to have an impact on transit. So we need extra money for the city to build the transit that's going to facilitate that.
So you can specify where the money's gonna.
Exactly. You can look at sort of the amenities in their relation to the property, whereas DCCs are that much more, you know, we have to have the list of projects and then the DCCs are set according to that list of projects. So it's just, yeah, what I heard at that conference was there are multiple ways to do things, and there are tons of municipal partners we can ask for advice, input. I definitely think, I've been thinking about this for 4 years and went away from that conference realizing I knew very little about housing. It is a very deep, dark hole of information that we're like, that we are just starting to get into. So it's coming up on the agenda shortly later today, you know, in part, and I think I'm really excited to dive back into it. I think at the provincial level, their announcement, I'm sure Councillor Sim will mention it, they have some priorities, and density is a big one. I think it's going to be interesting to see how rural communities fit. There was a meeting for rural communities at the conference. We went, and a representative from Williams Lake put up her hand and said, who is here from the provincial government? And one hand went up. So they put all the rural communities in a room together and then didn't attend. So it goes to show where we fit in the provincial housing scheme of things.
Isn't that interesting?
Now, to that end, what we did learn afterwards, though, it was a competing session with short-term vacation rentals and some of the policies there. And I think that there's going to be...
Those were back to
No.
back. There wasn't a competing
All right,
session.
Councillor Herring.
It was bad.
Yeah, that's not good.
Yeah.
Anything else that you'd like to share?
No, I think that's it for my report this week.
Okay, that's great. Next, I'm going to Councillor Mackenzie.
Thank you, Acting Mayor Sim. Pretty quiet couple weeks for me. There has been a lot of buzz revolving around the upcoming May Day parade after having a 3-year hiatus, which I'm personally excited to see this come back 'cause after all these years. Lots of positive and yet some negative feedback towards its return. Each to their own, but the general consensus is everyone's looking forward to see it come back. There needs to be some clarification on a couple of things to help out some that have been living on the outskirts, we'll put it that way. Also, a couple handfuls of citizens reaching out in regards to street sweeping within district limits, which has been underway now. The most common question coming to me is, when is my street getting swept? And the only thing I can say is good things come to those who wait, because I really can't tell you that answer. And I don't think our contractors can tell you that answer. So that seems to be the main thing coming back. I'd like to give a shout out to our fire department for quick and aggressive response to Saturday's fire down the flats. The hard work and dedication of our team of firefighters was definitely the difference between the property and neighboring properties being at a complete loss or demobbing at the end of the call, knowing that some assets and structures were salvaged. Chief Smith and your team, you're worth your weight in gold, and for this town, we just want to thank you for that. Also, April 12th to 14th, I attended Kofi and Prince George with Councillor Bratton, and she was much faster on the note-taking than I was. Some of my pictures never stayed. Some of my videos that I couldn't keep up with the writing are not there. So we did have the opportunity to speak with numerous individuals from all aspects involved around the forest industry, from MLAs and RPFs to Indigenous leaders such as Terry Teegee, Regional Chief for BC Assembly of First Nations. I always look forward to hearing what they have to say when we come up there. Unfortunately, a couple speakers that I've seen in the previous 2 times I've attended Kofi weren't there. It was a new president took over. It was a whole new structure to that compared to what I've seen in the last couple of years. It's still good nonetheless. Common theme definitely around the table is this is an industry in transition and there's no turning back. So industry leaders are constantly looking at innovative ways to move forward positively. It's not easy. It's not a quick change, and this is going to be ongoing for some time. So yeah, definitely a good conference. I do have some slide pictures that aren't going to do much good to this meeting, but I can send them out if anyone would like them. So, and that'd be about it for me. Thank you.
Well, it's nice to have your continued presence there so that you can see the continuum. Mm-hmm. Did you take away anything that you felt would impact our area in particular?
There is. I mean, we've taken such a transition over the years, the way things have changed here. I think we got the right group of people working around here. Yeah, that's a long conversation.
Yeah, so it's really that we need to be alert to what the government's doing.
We need to be alert. Reconciliation is a huge impact to this process, and from what I see at the district, I think we're moving forward in the right direction with that. But it's definitely a huge part of what's to come.
Great, thank you very much. Councillor Frizzle.
Oh, no, surprised me. I attended the Tourism World's Grey meeting on April 11th, and they're getting all geared up for the season. The information center is going to be opening on the 1st, and they've got their staff that pretty much hired, and they're looking for more. I'm actually going to be talking to Amanda in my other role to look for volunteers. She's looking for volunteers from the youth and the seniors, so we're hoping we can work together to really have a diverse group of people volunteering at the center. BC Parks informed us that they have purchased a house, and so they can board up their rangers that they have hired, and they'll have a place to stay, and we don't have to worry about where they're going to stay and whatnot. So that was a big relief. They're once again talking about their upgrades to the Trophy Mountain Meadows, the trail and the meadows. And the River Road is still with the minister, so I haven't had a chance to talk to the mayor about that. I want to talk to him about that as well. There is concerns that people are going over there and harvesting illegal firewood, so that is a concern. They also mentioned that SIMP is doing a grizzly bear study in the park. It's a conservation project, and so that'll be an interesting thing to see when they do it. Roland Neve is doing some funding for a park naturalist, and for the trails. Mole Falls Trails, he's putting money towards both of those. So they're busy. They're getting ready. They're excited about their opening, so that's good. And then on April 14th, I attended a meeting with the engineers, the rec site, this is my worst one, Rec Site and Trails BC representative and staff to talk about the bridge for the river trail and the concept of it and the design and how they're going to do it and how the trails are going to be. So it's really good. I was able to actually visualize how this is all going to work. So that was good for me, but I think it's going to be very exciting. It's going to be happening August to October. They're going to be working on it at that time, we hope. So that was very interesting on how they see it, and there'll be a bit of a trail change, and they're going to maintain that trail as a medium to difficult trail, so they don't have to worry about the maintenance quite so much. And on another note, I just wanted to mention that on the trail behind the hospital and Evergreen Acres, there's the grieving booth the wind phone, that we're just looking at getting the seniors bench up there. So it will be right there with it, so people can actually sit down when they're talking on the grieving phone. So I'm excited to see that come up, because the bench came in November last year, so we had to wait for spring. Yeah.
Have you heard of people using the phone?
Yes, I have. And you don't know about this, Councillor Bratton? It's a old-fashioned telephone in a booth. You pick up and you can talk to your loved one. You can just have your quiet moment with your loved one, and just by yourself out in the back behind, looking out on the river and the mountains. It's a beautiful spot that it is. So yeah, I can show you some pictures later. And that's it. That's my report.
Great. And just on that, I note that our MLA was very active, speaking on our behalf for the River Road as it related to finance.
Yeah.
So we'll stay tuned on that one. All right, we're going to move to Councillor Bratton.
Okay, so this time I have a little bit more. I am typically quite quiet. So I have a little bit, I'm also helping with the May Day Parade. And we have come across, as Councillor Mackenzie had mentioned, a little bit of confusion. So we'd like to clear up that this is absolutely a regular May Day Parade. This is in no way an actual Pride Parade. Regular, we've had every other year. Our people dress up, they make up really cool floats and maybe ride a trike and a skateboard and all of the above. We're embracing our heritage, so whatever that means for the people entering is whatever they want to come up with.
Councillor Bratton, so I just want to clarify. So just the theme for this year
Is embracing our heritage. Yes. So and we're quite excited with some of our entries that have already registered. Something I've been working on is trying to register ahead of time, but by all means, we will have a registration booth the day of, and people can register on site. So, and just to reiterate again, we'll be meeting in Kershaw, the subdivision. Hello. Oh, there we are. I'm back. Oh, I'm going in and out. Sorry. Okay, anyways, at the Kershaw subdivision and Highway 5 intersection, and we'll be going to Super Safe. And then the floats can either go up to Camp 2 to turn around, or go around the old Safety Mart, or they can park at 37 East, which used to be the Chuck Wagon spot. And so that's that on that. I'd also like to recognize Mel Savage's Celebration of Life was on the weekend. And when that was happening, they got the fire call. So in Mel fashion, she was always a busy gal, and what a way to commemorate her, actually. So, but it was very beautiful and well done, and quick, actually. So I was able to attend the Kofi convention as well with Councillor Mackenzie. And very interesting. I'd have to say the best conference I've been to by far yet. I got the most information. I connected with so many people. And I also have to say that I have to thank our community, because when I ran for this position, I had no idea that I would get this amount of learning and training involved with this. So thank you very much for voting me in and giving me all these absolutely great new opportunities. And some of those opportunities I've been to a TNRD municipal orientation. We've worked with Tracy Lawrenson for team building, and I've been to Kelowna for LGLA and now the Kofi. And I think I'm forgetting one or two, but anyways, those are things that I've been up to this point. So with Kofi, their theme was sustainability is growing, and I heard a heavy emphasis on First Nations being included at the table, not just referenced or just being consulted. They are actually now being part of the planning process, which I found very exciting. It just including everybody is what our world is turning to, which is much better. As Chief Terry Chiji had mentioned, consent-based decisions is where we're headed, which is wonderful. This was a sold-out conference of 600 attendees. There was a presentation from the Prince Rupert Port of Authority. I had no idea that port was as substantial as it was. Very interesting to me. My son actually worked up there for a short period of time. So, and something that was very interesting, and every contingency mentioned is, so Prince Rupert had 16,500 people that live there. They still have 16,500 people that live there, even though the port is as huge as it is. So everybody is struggling with workers, labor force. It's non-existent in many, many industries. And so very, very interesting. You know, we think it's just happening in Clearwater, but it's all across the board in all forestry stations and every other industry out there. We also heard from, they're trying to bring in new and innovative ways of integrating the youth into these labor-intensive jobs, which I found quite interesting. There was actually a story from one of the fellows, I think he was a Gorman Mill owner, and his 25-year-old son, he was had to go to the Philippines, he was going to travel, he worked at the mill. He said, "Did you give the mill a call that you're, not going to be able to show up?" He said, "Why?" So it was very interesting to hear that point of view that we have in our youth at this point, because when we all grew up, it was very respectful to make sure that we called in with our job. And now they're like, "It'll be there when I get back. It's no big deal." So we have to tweak some discussions with our youth, I think. We heard from the Honorable Nathan Cullen. Oh my goodness. He is hilarious. I sat laughing through his whole thing. And he's from the Ministry of Waterlands and Resource Management. And we also had the Premier David Eby. And he spoke, what I got from him was he understood our problems with permitting and our bottlenecks, and he wants to fix that. And he also understood our BCTS concerns. They were given a lot of permits and stuff. They weren't able to offload them last year, and now they're trying to do it this year. Well, the wood doesn't have the value, and they're really trying to focus on value instead of volume. So they're kind of in a little bit of a flux there. But I got from the Premier that he was very interested in hearing of these concerns and trying to fix them, streamline our processes so that we can get better value wood to where it needs to get to the export. And that was where the port came in, was all our exports, and CN with getting exports out by rail. This is all so interesting for me. Anyhow. And yeah, just thank you very much for sending me, because I really enjoyed that conference. Oh, and something else that was super cool is they actually decorated. This is the female coming out of me. We had table centers. They decorated the stage. And they had very good conversive speakers. They had 3 and 4 on the stage at once and back and forth. It was very, very interesting. And I'll let it go at that. Sorry, that was a long one.
Oh, I think it's really important to get that type of feedback, especially going to a conference and being able to bring that back and share it. So thank you very much for all of those details. I will close off on just some of this. I just want to do a shout out to our fire department for a great Easter egg hunt. They did a really, really nice job on that, and I think it's something that everybody looks forward to. There's the Last Coffee House that's going on this weekend. We are fortunate to be welcoming a new vice principal to our elementary school. The Ski Hill fundraiser is slated for April the 29th. So I hope everybody gets their tickets after a no snow season. I think that they could really do with some attendance. And I also just want to acknowledge that you were able to mention Melanie Savage. It's not often that we get to have angels that dance amongst us, and it's always very sad when they leave, but she certainly sprinkled her magic amongst us and made us better. So thank you for that. And then lastly, I had also had the pleasure to attend the BC Housing Summit with Councillor Herring and with Councillor Matheson. I've given you a very long report on the table, but essentially why I've done that is because what we learned is why some of the demands that we've been asking. So one of the downloads, and I'll call it that for the moment, has been the housing needs report. And we had to report out on that. And we didn't maybe understand why. It's an intrinsic pillar to how we are supposed to be building in preparation. We are in a housing crisis. The Premier also spoke to us at the conference. He was quite clear in the fact that they want bold, even audacious plans. They're very clear that if there is space, it needs to be built on. And that they're holding people accountable. The luxury of single-family homes is really something to be looking at and to be thought of differently. So with that, so the housing needs report, and that also has a really strong relationship to the official community plan, which we'll be addressing, and then how to encourage development, some of the ideas from the government. So that handout I've given you sort of outlines all of that. What I do just want to take away for council to think about, again, the government is asking for bold ideas. If there are new builds, the government wants to know if every square inch is being utilized for housing. There needs to be a systemic change about the way we think about housing. Single family units are the easiest but have the largest footprint. We need to think about housing as a bigger ecosystem, how it ties into the services like education, immigration, as well as skills training. Think small-scale multi-unit homes, and think about housing as a continuum of how communities age, young people, middle, family to seniors. And the big topic that we heard a lot about was the missing middle, and that's going to be a big phrase. One of the questions that a lot of the rural communities had was, will the BC government seed communities to assist with innovative planning and grant applications? So for a community like ours, 2,500 people, our staff is already stretched fairly thin, just keeping up with things. So to then ask for, their attention for innovative planning and grant applications, and yet we've got a very strong land base. How does that fit? So again, that ecosystem concept, and also the introduction of CACs, which are community amenity contributions, which Councillor Herring mentioned. And the thing to take note on was the mass timber projects are highly favored by the government, and I think that ties into what we were hearing at the Kofi conference. So that's something else our developers really need to be listening to. And they are going to have a broad-based policy proposal that's going to come all across British Columbia, similar to what you heard at Kofi. It's how to streamline those processes. And the last one is, actually second to last, is some of the communities, they had design guidelines to help developers understand the building process in various communities. So there was templates, and they actually had like a paint by number development. So you could go in and you pick which house you wanted and you choose the color, but because it's already been an approved home, it would fast track the whole process for building, which was really interesting, and a lot of communities were doing that one. And also, it's important to recognize that some of our housing stresses, as well as that how it relates to some of our homelessness that we're seeing in our larger city centers. BC welcomed 100,000 people. 100,000 immigrants. Now, the federal government has got a very, very aggressive immigration target, and yet they have not married it to where these people are going to live. So the BC government is really trying to tie that together. So I think for Clearwater, we're well positioned for some really good opportunities, but the name of the game is going to be partnerships. And there ends a lot of information. So audience, thanks for being with us. Thanks for everybody staying awake. That's great. And I think that we are covered on that one. So next, we're going to move on to the CAO's report. He's got the monthly report that summarizes the activity of the district activities through March. Any questions for Mr. Thomas on that? I'm looking at page 31 to 37. Councillor Herring.
Just as always, blown away by how much you guys get done in a month. Like every time I look through this thing, I'm like, really, all that? It's almost like you guys have too much work to get done.
Yeah, I was particularly interested by some of the climate action attendances. So that was really good to see. Thank you very much for making the time for that. That's great. And then we're going to move to the building permit. Oh, sorry. Sorry,
I have a
Councillor Bratton.
question, but I think my mic might be goofy. I don't know. I'm normally so loud. I had a question. You guys responded to 14 BC on one call requests. Is that unusual, or is that? I just thought it sounded kind of high to me. Or does that encompass a lot of different things?
Yeah, they're not always emergent.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
just people are interested in doing any work on their property, they would do a one call.
Oh, okay, gotcha. I was thinking major was going on. And I had one more question for John, I think. You had emerging issues of note and road grading. Does that mean it's coming up?
We're hoping to grade Dunn Lake. Yes, we are aware of the concerns. It's something I'm definitely handing over to Chad to take care of for sure.
Okay. Had to comment on that.
I spoke with Doug Ernst this morning, and he was going out to grade Dunn Lake Road.
May I ask what I know you have to do it on by need basis. So now that we're kind of in the weird spring kind of space, what constitutes being able to go out? What's my question? How bad does it get before you go out? That's not a good question.
Well, we depend on our roads contractor
Okay.
he's out daily looking at the roads, and he
Okay.
identifies them. So
Yeah, and I mean, I know you can't do it in the rain and, different weather patterns like that, so,
right.
yeah, okay. Just being nosy.
That's great. Any other comments from staff on that report, or are we good? Great, thank you very much. Building permit, the residential statistics have been provided. That's on the TNRD, the scope for all of our communities in our area.
That one threw me because I'm looking and I says, where is this all coming from? I didn't know we were doing it. Then I realized it was all of TNRD, not just us.
Yeah, which is great. So any comments on that?
I would just like to say, if we can pass feedback, this is a much more useful graphic than the longer chart. It is really nice to see the broken out one afterwards, but I really like the kind of summary sheet with it. So feedback for them, that's great.
Super. Okay, so we'll move on to the upcoming meeting schedule. We do have a number of things that we attend. I just wanted to make sure that these dates matched what people had in their calendars. Councillor Frizzle.
I just wanted a question on the government operations. The next meeting date is September 5th. Is that starting budget again?
Most likely. So that's the date as per the previously advertised schedule. We could certainly do some changes there as well if necessary.
But is that earlier than normal? Or is that,
I don't
no?
think so.
So should we be thinking about earlier then? Because we were talking about trying to get,
So
that's the only
maybe-
reason I'm asking, because I wasn't sure when we actually started the budget.
So I think that one of the things that we're going to be doing is our strategic plan
Yeah, I know.
session
No,
is
no,
we're
I
going to break
understand
that
that.
down. But I think
It was a question to,
No, so what I was going to say on that is that how we can facilitate starting the budget process a little sooner, working through the summer and working through some of our committees and just redefining. And I gave you my other missive, which was oh no, I didn't. Oh, I've saved you. So I think that you're right, Councillor Frizzle, is how to start that, because Director Klassen is quite keen on getting us ahead of the game this year.
well, we're all in for it.
Yeah, which is
truly.
great. I just want to comment that the Chamber of Commerce, I did attend their social talked about that last time. But their next meeting is May the 9th. And we did get a meeting invitation for the diversity, equity, inclusion for April 24th on that. And I am hoping that staff could come up with a date for the recruitment and retention. I think that there's going to be some issues there that we would all happily lean into. And is there a staff calendar that does some of that sharing? So when the different staff who are responsible, do they plug in the various meetings, and is that then shared out?
We have a corporate calendar that we enter those meetings in, and we do share it with the members who are expected to participate, but it's not something for the public.
No, that's okay. I'm just wondering because I know that there's the diversity, equity, and inclusion one. It says to be determined, but then the meeting notice came out. So I'm just wondering if they just haven't had a chance to, or how it's done, but you've explained it to me.
So the invite came out today, agenda came out on Friday, so that's why it's not aligned. But
Yeah, and is the goal to get some set meetings so that people can actually placehold them?
long term, yes.
Long term, okay.
But that is very much going to be subject to capacity.
Right. It is something to look at, and I think it's prioritizing. And even if that's something we can look at, it is at least quarterly and placehold them to look for that. I know that is just from the healthcare perspective for the recruitment and retention is, getting people's dates and securing them is really important. So I share that there. Any other questions on that? Councillor Bratton?
The Accessibility Advisory Standing Committee, I'd like to put my name up for that, if we're allowed.
Do you want to hold that for when it comes up in the agenda?
Okay.
Okay, great. Moving on from there. New business under staff reports, I have 16.1, water and sewer bylaw. We have a staff report. Mr. Thomas.
Thank you, Acting Chair. The staff report is to initiate 2 projects. This was on the original work plan I inherited, but just to reconfirm, council direction to start a review of the water and sewer bylaws for the District of Clearwater to bring them up to date to current standards. There are some good stuff in there that the district may want to consider keeping, but the idea is to bring forward a draft or council provide direction on what it wishes to have included in the draft and bring that forward within 3 months.
And just for the benefit of council members, what might be 1 or 2 things that have immediately stuck out to you why that this is important for the district to pursue?
The bylaws that are currently in place are from 1980s. They're quite dated, and they actually create challenges with implementation if they're in conflict with various provisions of the community charter or the LGA or other pieces of legislation that impacts rights and obligations and property rights.
Yeah, so I think that maybe for the summary is that we need to modernize and get caught up, that there's been a number of changes from the government. It is just an example of what comes from Victoria is often shared at our desks and just making sure. So that is traction. We have 2 options before us, if anybody would like to make a move forward.
I'll move option 1, that we commence a review.
Great, seconded by? Great. Do we have any discussion on that motion? All those in favor? That motion carries. Thank you very much. And thank you for committing yourself to doing that. It'll be great to get updated and there. I thought it was interesting going through it is that we can shut off people's water for not paying. Yeah, which was good there. All right, so we're on page 3. We're going to move to page 4. 16.2 is the housing starts and the DCC balances. So before you, you've got 37 pages of all of these different reports. Let's start with the housing report. I believe that had been requested by Councillor Herring. Councillor Herring, do you have any questions on that right off the bat?
Not questions. Really interesting information, though. What struck me in some of the housing stats we got before the conference was that we still have 1/3 of our builds happening by owner builders. Yeah. When I talk to people at the housing summit, no one else has that. That is not going on elsewhere in BC. That's a rural phenomenon and a Clearwater phenomenon in particular. I think it's something I think to keep an eye on because remember when we charge DCCs and stuff, we use language like developer. But people who are building their own home are often buying a piece of land, developing from greenfield, and they're acting as their own developer. So when the province is talking about supporting new development, and when we're talking about charging cost charges on new development, there's a difference between somebody who is developing a greenfield lot in a country residential area, which is what most of our builds are in Clearwater, versus somebody who's building a fourplex in a dense area. So those stats are really good to have. 30% being developer initiated was also interesting, especially paired with the idea that that's all of our multi-unit buildings are done by developers. So really interesting stats. I thought that stuff was great. The DCC numbers really jump out to me. It's, as I suspected, what's our balance? Is it 294, 634, which is significantly short of getting much of that project list done, as I understand it. It's a long-term project list, obviously, but I mean, that's a drop in the bucket compared to all the development we would need, or rather the infrastructure we would need to support the development and growth.
Well, just as an example, our siphon project is estimated at 2.2 million.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I think that that was reiterated at the housing conference, and I think that that is what the NDP government is really pushing through, is to look at all things like DCCs, how that impacts housing builds. So that they do have a lens. I want to thank the inclusion of the development cost charge, a guide for elected officials, council. Because I get to sit here in this chair for tonight only, I'm going to take the opportunity and task this with you for some homework, to do some reading on it. It's an excellent document. Yeah, make some notes, and please have those notes for when we do our strategic plan, because I think that there's some great things that we can take back. Each week brings new readings, but if we could make some notes on this and bring it forward, I think that we will have a very robust session. So thank you very much for including that. Then we've got the DCC list of properties, which you had also alluded. Is there anything that staff would like to comment on that, or sort of some observations about what's happening?
Sorry, you said DCC list of properties?
The list of properties that was also included. That's the one that Councillor Herring had just alluded to. It's the one that had $294,000.
Yeah, that's the account balances of the DCCs.
I don't have any account other than to reiterate the comments made by council. The current accumulated balance of 294 is cents on the dollar for what the infrastructure program of the district is, and that's not factoring in roads per se. 44 million plus 20 million in hard infrastructure for water, sewer type services.
And just to confirm, is when are those DCCs payable by people?
According to the current and former DCC bylaw, DCCs are collected at the time of building permit, not at the time of subdivision.
Yeah, and I think that that's probably something for, and Councillor Herring's been very, very strong on this, is that money is up front, and yet if the development takes some time, it's a challenge. So those are the types of things we can take note of. Is there any other good comments? Councillor Herring?
Just a couple things. I noticed the this DCC guidelines, they were great. I really liked, it was on page 4 of that, 77 of the agenda. But the last bullet point there, it's the Local Government Act specifies that DCCs may not be levied against, and that's a residential building which contains fewer than 4 units, unless otherwise specified by the local government, which means that, so almost all of our DCCs are collected against buildings that have fewer than 4 units. So we're allowed to make that rule, but they don't actually recommend that in this document. And so I think really we need to have a sit down on how this all works. I would love, we can talk about it as part of strategic planning perhaps. I'd love to see somebody brought in that's an expert in all of these things, in community amenity contributions, DCCs, and the planning process. And then I'd also love to see a meeting with some of our building contractors about some of the hiccups in the process. Because I think there are ways we can improve even outside of the DCC way to just get some efficiencies. a good example is I'm thinking about building a shed myself, and I went on the website to determine how big a shed I can build without a permit. And as soon as you read that, there's two contradicting pieces of information on the front page. So either 200 square feet or 100 square feet, depending which point you want to take, sort of thing, and it's not clear. So stuff like that, I think we could probably find ways to have our developers come in and tell us where they're struggling to find our information and where their stumbling blocks are. So I think we've already got a committee talking about housing growth, and maybe it's time to put that on the agenda.
So are you suggesting you want to activate that committee, or are you just wanting to have an informal meeting?
I think that's something we can discuss in strategic planning, how we want to go about it. I personally would love to see an initial meeting determine, is this a steady working group, or is this going to be just a short, I don't know what to call it, task force? I forget what the designation is for when you have a specific mandate bound group that's accomplished this and then disperse rather than an ongoing thing. So I think that's something we can look at either way, but I would really love to see some initial conversations start about how we're going to do development going forward. Because if we're going to be able to raise, rather, say 15% of the total cost of our development through DCCs, where are we getting that other 85, right?
So it sounds like we need some lessons in urban planning or rural planning. And I am a little reluctant to maybe suggest that it goes to strategic plan, because I'm finding that agenda to already be quite full. What I am wondering is what you think, Mr. Thomas, about setting up like a session where we get some best practice lessons. And having that maybe just somebody being brought in by Zoom. There was a number of examples in that sheet that I gave you of best practices from other communities and how they went. And I think that we could learn from some of their guides, some of the things that they have gone through. Cornell seemed to have a very progressive document. Parksville had a really good document. And maybe just having that a 1 hour session on what we could do. Maybe somebody look at our website, make some suggestions, and we just have that as a session for council. What do you think about that, Mr. Thomas?
I understand what the goal is,
Yeah.
to gather information. I will work with the management team to come up with a proposal for next meeting.
Yeah, so now would you like a motion to have that? Okay, so what I'm going to look for is a motion to direct staff to put together some information pieces and bring back at the next meeting. If somebody could make that motion, please. For development, housing development. Well, yeah, all right, housing. I'll leave it. Councillor Herring?
Yeah, I think housing development and rural planning for the whole game. All the words.
Mr. Prime, do you have that down, or do you need us to repeat that?
If you could repeat that, that'd be great from the beginning. I got half of it.
I can help because I did put you on the spot.
So it's
Motion to direct staff.
to direct staff to bring back options or suggestions, either one, on the formation of
No, well, why don't we get the information first?
on housing development and rural,
And having a session for council.
an information session for us.
How are you making out on that? Can you do that? That's great. Right.
I just have a point of clarification. Is the expectation to bring back report, or to identify someone or people who can perhaps do the session?
To identify people who can do the session, who
the
can help
session.
us do a review of our website to help streamline application processes, as well as to give us some best practices from other communities. Too much?
Application processes for
Development. So as Councillor Herring has just said, and I'm sure that what we're finding is when people get into the process, it's not always clear. So there's some stumbling blocks, and they come with some expectations. And when those expectations aren't met, is there some misunderstandings?
I think that might be a next step, kind of after the initial. I think I'd rather hear from the businesses in town.
So we've got two motions then. They're two different ones.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe we pull out the process refresh until we have
So you still want your motion to be for having an information session for council? Okay, agreed. So we're clear on that. Any
Would
other?
you like me to read back the motion that I have?
I think that's an excellent idea.
Okay, that council directs staff to bring back suggestions and identify possible consultants to deliver an information session on housing development and rural planning to bring back to the next council meeting.
You are terrific. Great. Is there any other discussion from council?
Nope, I like
And
that.
was there a second motion to be made? Sorry, but was there a second motion? No.
Not at this time.
Thank you.
Yeah, we'll move from there. All right, all those in favor? Great, and the motion carries. Thank you. I think that's a really good step because it is,
Yeah,
it's big.
definitely needed.
It's really
I like
big.
that, Bill.
And it's going to be demanded of the government, so we best get on that. All right, moving next to 16.3, audit planning documents, information. That's, I believe that's you, Director.
Thank you,
Hassan?
Acting Mayor Sim. What you have in front of you on pages 108 to 140 is the audit planning document. And in the document, if you read through it, I can go through a few points, highlights if you like.
What stuck out for you that you'd like to share?
Well, it's a typical audit planning document. It tells the reader what the audit responsibility is, what the materiality is, what the process is, and the engagement and the independence letter. So it basically tells us the contract we have with the auditors and what they're going to provide. The auditors have a responsibility to work with management and issue a financial statement. They will provide relevant and timely management letters, so they'll provide some comments back as where we can improve or perhaps where the deficiencies may be. They'll provide or present all the audit findings to council. And they'll hopefully provide a reasonable assurance that the financial statements are without material misstatement. If on page 115 of that package, if council is aware of any instance of actual or suspected or alleged fraud, please let them know. So that's if you're aware of anything, please let them know. Materiality for our organization is 3% of revenue, which is about $200,000.
I need some help understanding materiality.
So materiality is if they found a mistake that is over in consolidation over $200,000. Now the financial statements are materially misstated. So that's, and if you're a larger community, the amount is more.
Okay.
That's how they determine materiality. They wouldn't alter their opinion if it was like for $5,000 or $10,000.
Okay. Anything else in there?
That's about it.
I just want to be clear. First of all, I'll turn to council. Any questions on this?
No.
The only thing I had a question was on page 116, which was the significant risks and planned responses. And there's risks noted. There's 3 items there. What I'm guessing is that the council has moved forward with updating some of the accounting software. Will this help in that?
Well, what we're moving forward with is the financial planning software, not the accounting software. We still use our software, which is called Amaze
Okay.
software. And really, when it comes to financial controls, you're looking at not software. Usually doesn't do it for you, but it's the values and the principles and the ethics that the corporation or the council and the senior management team and the staff actually do from day to day. If those aren't in place and they find that there's an issue, the software won't
Okay.
find that for you. So you really have to start, it's a holistic approach when it comes to financial controls.
That is such a great answer. Thank you. Any other comments on that? Okay. So with that, that is just for information only. I think the next one we're going to move to is the financial update and the project performance, pages 141 to 143. Director Klassen, this is you.
So what you have in front of you is just a quick update for 2022. The projects that we have, and you have 2 pages. The first page is your capital projects. The second page is your special projects. We have your amended financial plan, the actual cost and the status of those projects, and I've also added the draft financial plan on the far right, just for your information. So, just in summary, we had $4.9 million in the financial plan under capital projects. That included 27 projects. Of those, 6 were canceled, so that reduced it down by $963,000. So we have $3.9 million in projects. And we spent about 68% of that, $2.7 million. We carried forward several projects. About 5 that weren't started, 6 that were started, so all those parks, we carried those forward, just we have a little bit left to spend on those. And 1 we've carried forward to 2024.
And which one was that? I'm sorry, just as
That's
a quick one.
the bridge.
Oh, right. Okay, yeah, we
Steel
did.
Bridge we carried forward to 2024. So we've made quite a bit of progress with the projects. From 2022, we carried forward a few that we're finishing off, like the Clearwater River Trail, great project. And we're looking forward, there's 5 projects we haven't started, but we're carrying them forward and completing them in 2023. And
That's
then
great. That 2023, that's terrific news.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then in 2020, for the special projects, there's several there. Those included things that aren't tangible in nature, so those would be your special strategic plan consultants, small items like the office furniture or asset retirement obligations. Those are well on their way, some of those, and will be completed in 2023.
Great.
That's about it.
Questions for staff?
One question?
Councillor Frizzle?
It says here that the marquee tent is complete, so do we actually have it?
Yes.
Oh,
I haven't seen it. I'm
maybe we
excited.
could use it for May Day.
I don't know anything about it. I don't know about it.
I believe the marquee tent has been used for the first fish ceremony last year as the first run of it.
Oh,
Excellent.
maybe the second one will be May Day. Great. Okay, thank you very much for that. Okay, moving on from there, I don't think that there's any requirement for there. So that was 16.4, is that right? Yeah. Okay, that was our verbal report. Terrific. Moving on to 16.5, Accessibility Advisory Committee, draft terms of reference. Just to reiterate from previous meetings, this is a new mandate from the provincial government. All municipalities, regional districts, school boards, and more are going to be required to do an accessibility. We discussed this yet last night at the school district. One point that had come out from the school district was in reviewing policies. So for example, in a job posting, if you wanted to apply to be a director and the job posting said must be able to drive, what did that do for an accessibility? And do you need to be able to drive? Or what if you have a driver? So it was really interesting how through this lens, there's lots of different opportunities to see things differently. So I'm glad that the district's going to be working on this. And I thank you for a very, very thorough report. Is there anything else you'd like to add to your report?
No, at this time, I don't believe there's anything to add. I would be open to any suggestions if anyone had any for the terms of reference that need to get modified, but I believe it is very thorough as is and would be a great start for the committee to begin working on.
And I believe that the requirement is that we just need to have our committee and sort of almost rough drafts in place by, is it September 2024 or is it September 2023?
You are correct. It's September 2024 is when we should have a pretty good idea and a first sort of initial pass at a plan. So the idea is that they're going to meet monthly up until then, and then once the plan's sort of complete, then they would switch to quarterly or as needed, much like our other committees and working groups.
Right. And because that this has been mandated by the government, and yet it would be another project to put on staff's plate, we do have finances put aside in the budget to assist with the plan.
We have set aside some funds for plans, and I think there were two. One for the siphon, and one was $50,000 to
Yeah.
deal with those sort of,
Okay, so we have a bank account, so to speak.
essentially.
Yeah, okay. That's great there. That's great. Questions of council? Okay.
Is this where I offer to stand?
Well, why don't we get it voted on, and then let's have that noted.
I don't know.
All right, so we have 3 options in front of us. I do note that
I'll move option 1.
option 1. Do I have a seconder? That would be from Councillor Bratton. Councillor McKenzie, 146.
Thank you. Yeah, I was going to say, I see one option, 146. Thank you very much.
Okay. And just for the reference of the audience, option 1, that council adopt the terms of reference for the Accessibility Advisory Committee as presented, and that council direct staff to post an expression of interest to invite community members to apply for participation in the Accessibility Advisory Committee, with a focus on including individuals with disabilities or those representing disability-serving organizations. And that council further direct staff to gather and review the expressions of interest and present a list of potential committee members to council for review and final selection at a subsequent council meeting. I also note with the development of this committee is 50% must have a disability recognition. Is that right? Okay. So we have a motion on the floor. Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries. Now, for the record, we have Councillor Bratton, who is very keen. So maybe if we could make a note of that, and when we bring back some of the expressions of interest and we get formation of that, you know who our point person wants to be.
Absolutely. And as a standing committee, it can be up to 3 members of council as well, just so we don't have a council quorum. But if more are interested, feel free, please, to let me know.
Okay, great. Well, you've already got a very keen interest, so be prepared for a flooding of the inbox. All right, so we have that. And then we have a staff report, 16.6, distribution of surplus. So that's pages 151 to 152. This is an information item. Is there anything you wanted to share on that, Director Klassen, or?
The information you have in this report is pretty much self-explanatory. You may have remembered one, we had a tax sale. The individual that owned it has passed away. We have a surplus now. The redemption period is passed, and now we're just following the legislative process. And we didn't want to surprise council with this in the newspaper. So this will be in the newspaper for 2 weeks. 2 weeks. And then if it's unclaimed in 3 months, we send it away. You send it's to the Minister of Unclaimed Property Act.
Okay, that's great. Any other questions for Director Klassen? Okay, thank you very much for that information. Next on the agenda, rolling along with your community. This is a grant update. This is a staff report that has been included. Councillor Frizzle, do you have any comments on this? I think that this is...
This is going along. It started out with 10. I think the second time there was less people on the bus, but there have been a lot of inquiries on how this is working, and where the bus will stop on Saturdays, and especially will it go to the breakfast and farmers market, which is interesting because that was the focus of it. So I'm actually hoping that once May comes along and it's going every Saturday and people get used to that, that'll be well attended. It's looking positive. I got 3 emails about it today, so.
Oh, that's good.
I'm hoping.
Right. And was that in the newsletter? I think it was, that schedule was there. So interest, and then, as you say, May 6th with the farmers market, that's going to be a great thing. Okay. I don't believe any action is required on this. This is for information. Thank you very much. Okay, and now we have 16.8, the OCP. This has been presented as a late agenda item on the table for you. Turn that over to you, Mr. Thomas.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. The District of Clearwater has an official community plan that was established in 2012. The normal practice would be between 5 and sometimes 7 years after the age of the OCP to review to make sure that it's still relevant for the municipality's future in terms of development. Our OCP is now 11 years old, and we are seeking direction on whether council wants to move forward with updating the OCP. I note that it was budgeted over 2 years for 2023 to 2024. Total budget is 150,000, 75,000 per year. We do require direction from council on to what extent council wish to update the OCP, whether it's surface level or full rebuild, because that will certainly have impact on how we approach the procurement process and certainly cost as well, long term.
Questions for staff?
I mean, more of a comment than a question, I guess. I personally would lean towards a real light skim of the OCP. I think we have great bones. I definitely think we could use an update, but like the meat of it seems like it looks like what I want out of an OCP, and I think we, spent a lot of time at the time. So I'd really like to do just a skim kind of thing, refresh rather than a rebuild.
Any other comments?
Basically what I was going to say too. I think I like the OCP, but it is, like you say, it's overdue to have a relook at. So I like the idea of doing the refresh.
So just a comment on that, and as part of the 9-page missive, I have highlighted the Housing and Official Community Plan. I had leaned that I believe that we do have good bones, although the original one was done all those years ago. How many years did you go to? 11 years ago? We did do a light refresh. I think it was in 2016, 17. Does that sound familiar? Right. No, it was a bit later than that because we didn't get it till... It took us a long time to get it. To move forward with that, what I am interested in is how our OCP is going to incorporate some of the government's new visions for housing. And I think that that's going to be a really important part to marry those, to hear about some of those new policies. Even as I've mentioned here on page 6, the type of plan outlines how specific areas of the community will be used for residential, commercial. We're going to have to be talking about things about that dense infill. We're going to have to be talking about some different footprints. So it may be a little more than that. What I am wondering is if council wants to maybe take a partner and go through it and have some discussions and then bring back direction at the next meeting, or are you comfortable making a decision now? If staff has any comments, this would be an awesome time for input.
There is no right or wrong way to approach it. The decision before council tonight is not the policy positions of
Nope.
the revised OCP. The decision tonight is merely to indicate to staff, as we are preparing to build the RFP process to hire a consultant to do this work, how are we communicating that outwardly? Are they expecting, they being council, are council expecting a full rewrite, or we want an updated OCP? Now, when they start the process, council can certainly provide better direction as to what sort of policy areas council wants to see as part of that, because there will be public consultation, there will be robust community engagement. Another point council needs to consider is how does council want to see the OCP process managed? Is it staff only as a project, or is it a steering committee, or is it inclusive of First Nation representative? How does council want to approach that process?
It could definitely be a lot. I'm also going to point out that in that square is the OCP and housing policies and how that can relate to public hearings, and how, if we've got a good OCP, it can really speak to how people want to come into our community. So I'm going to throw a suggestion on the table that maybe we do some individual work and look at some other communities' OCPs. Again, Quesnel, Parksville, even Vancouver, North Island, Port Hardy had some good ones to kind of compare. Look at what we have, and then can we come back with maybe a more substantive answer at the next meeting? Councillor Herring, do you have some comments?
My take on it is, I think we need to do the refresh either way, but the level of sort of review, I agree with you. I think it's great for us to, to take that deep dive and say, where do we want to go exactly? I'm just not sure. Do you need direction immediately to start the process, or is this something that chewing on isn't really going to affect the process?
There will be no material impact at this point. The project hopefully will start in September. Working backwards, we need ideally at least 6 weeks before. Maybe 2 months would be ideal.
Does council feel it's reasonable to come back with an answer at the next meeting? The other thing that I would be curious to hear about is that the mayor sat on the last OCP. So, and I would be very interested in his comments about, what that group looked like. And then maybe we phase it in the fact that we have a consultant that comes in, is, more familiar with some of the new government directions, can do a comparison, and then could actually even give us some advice on that. Is that a reasonable query? I won't say it's a direction, but would that be reasonable in the world of consultants? Like for me to go through the OCP, I'm like, oh, we don't have success by 6 anymore. Yeah, we could take that out. But to have a comprehensive answer of what's coming down the pipeline from the government, how much we need to change, and where our opportunities are, that is a bit beyond me. I mean, I'd need some time to go and compare it. I would like to hear from someone who does a review and say, these would be some areas, and give a recommendation. And then we move on that. That's my initial thought. But again, we could hold that for the next meeting.
If I may?
Yeah.
That sounds like a great point in the scope of work for the consultant. And, subject to their response on that, it may indicate that you may need to do a deeper dive than council initially
Exactly.
think,
Exactly. I think I don't know what I don't know, and I need somebody who does know to help me learn what I need to know. Councillor Frizzle?
Well, I was just thinking too, we're going to have to be thinking about the housing development and all that. And that's in the OCP, but it's going to have to be more extensive. I know myself that I know more about infrastructure now, and I know what we probably need, and it's more than I actually know. I don't know what I don't know, but I know that we need to be really focused on the infrastructure. So yeah, maybe we need to
Maybe we need an overview.
We need an overview.
Okay. So why don't we, if we can all come back with our answers and our observations, have some reflection about some other communities, and if we could all commit to looking at 2 or 3 other communities and bringing that back at the next meeting, and that way we can give some very specific direction to staff. Councillor Frizzle.
I just want to ask a question. Like this accessibility committee that we are mandated to do, that'll have a impact on it as well.
Absolutely.
So
that's why this OCP
is going to be,
we're very lucky.
It's starting to get bigger already.
Yeah. But staging it so we don't, bite off. And I think that some of us around this table remember the last OCP. It took 5 years to get done. The consultant kept putting us off.
Would a consultant actually suggest as well what to bring in for the accessibility factor?
I think that's why we need experts, because this is all new. Just these 2 new things have been coming down the pipeline, just these alone.
And they're big.
And they're big. And the government, they are also going to probably be stepping in over legislation around short-term rentals. They're going to be stepping in around policies about how we streamline building and development. So it's good. I think we will do well if we go slow to get there quickly.
And I would like to flag for council, once the OCP is updated, whenever time frame that is, it will also precipitate an updating of the zoning bylaw, which will then have cascading effects on all other bylaws that deals with development. So the glue to all of the reviews from the province, even though they may not necessarily be saying it directly, is to make sure your OCP is in alignment. because following that, everything else needs to be in alignment with the OCP.
And that's why if we can make a decision by in the next 2 weeks, because we will not be the only community and consultants are going to have a lot of work ahead of them. So anyway, have we landed on a direction for council? Yeah.
It sounds like a motion to table.
Motion to table. Would anybody like to? Councillor Bratton motions to table this to the next meeting. It is seconded by Councillor Mackenzie.
Yep. Oh, I thought Councillor Bratton seconded. I thought I
Nope.
just heard.
Oh. Do we have any final discussion on that? No. All those in favor? Great. Motion carries. Thank you for bringing that forward. And I also want to thank you for bringing it into the budget process. I think that was actually quite visionary. So thank you. Okay. Oh, yeah. We are on to the really exciting part, page 166 to 171, the adopt the 5-year financial plan. Now, before we go through this process, Director Klassen, is there anything you'd like to share or highlight or anything?
At this point, I have nothing further to add to the 2023-2027 financial plan, but it's been a joy to work with you all, so thank you.
Well, and we feel likewise. It was very, very clear and lots of great things. So, yeah, we have a bylaw. I do just want to, for anybody who's listening, is that on the March 21st meeting is that there's an excellent report on the budget where Director Klassen has done a lot of the summaries and just talks about a lot of the different projects that are going on, the increased taxation to allocate an additional $100,000 to roads, increasing the grant and aid budget by that small amount, there's a lot of good details in there. And there's also a great summary of all the projects that are going on in this district. And it really is with the lens of being good stewards of our community. And thank you very much for guiding us through that. So is there any other questions or comments? Great. So this is third reading. I missed the last two. Is that correct? Adoption. Oh, all right. So District of Clearwater 2023. Oh, let's have a motion, somebody. Councillor Frizzle, I think you'd be great at that. All right, do I have a seconder?
Second that.
Ah, Councillor Mackenzie, this is super. I love a team, right? Sitting here in the arena, failing greatly. Any other comments? Great. No discussion? All in favor? No? Oh, thank you. I'm glad you're here. District of Clearwater 2023 to 2027 5-year financial plan bylaw number 281/2023, a bylaw to adopt the 2023 to 2027 5-year financial plan. Whereas Section 165 of the Community Charter requires that Council shall adopt a 5-year financial plan. Now, therefore, the Council of the District of Clearwater, in an open meeting assembled, enacts as follows. This bylaw may be cited as District of Clearwater Bylaw number 281/2023, 2023 to 2027 5-year financial plan. I know, I'm just taking a moment. That was my first bylaw. All those in favor? Great. Motion carries, and I want to thank all of you for the months of preparation and just the hard work and the deliberation and all of that. So you have a budget, Director Klassen. Fantastic. Great. Now where are we?
18-1, I believe.
Yeah. So I just wanted, can I just get a time check here, please? So it's 7:53. I do know that we have a member of the community who's with us, Mr. Small. And I know that you had some thoughts that you wanted to share. We're about to go into a committee meeting, and we're going to be talking about one of the items that you had wanted to hear about, which is the Dutch Lake line painting. So are you okay staying to the end of the meeting?
Oh, and I'm talking about.
Well, we're going to talk about Dutch Lake and the line painting in this next part of the meeting. Okay, so you're going to stay?
I guess so.
Okay.
It's not gonna be 3 hours.
Well, I don't know. I just want to also acknowledge that I do have your thoughts here. So if you choose not to stay, I will read out the letter that you've left, which I can do. And this meeting is also being recorded so that there is a record of it. I'm just conscious of these evening meetings. They're late.
So, I'm interested in the bike trails.
Good. Well, we're going to get to that. So
So,
Are you getting to it right now?
we're going into the infrastructure committee meeting right now.
I kind of cornered, the mayor the other day, and it sounded like this was gonna be a specific.
Yep, it
bike
is.
trail
Nope.
meeting, but I guess it's not, eh?
Oh, I see. Yeah, no. Okay.
No, okay.
Okay. We do need to move into it. Can I ask when the next Trails Trails meeting is? May 2nd. Is that open to the public to attend? So, Mr. Thomas, if I may, Mr. Small, that you were specifically interested in the trails, and the Trails Task Force meets on May the 2nd, and that meeting is open to the public. Because your comments are strictly geared around the trails, would you like me to send your letter to the Trails Task Force Committee instead of presenting tonight?
May the 2nd won't work for me.
Okay, I can still present your letter and move it through to that working group. Welcome to government. It's okay. Yeah.
I could get way more detailed than that, I guess, but I'd like to get a meeting and just, talk about it, see how things go, but.
Okay, Councillor Frizzle is the council liaison to the Trails Task Force Committee, so I'm wondering if I could connect the two of you together.
Yeah, sure, Kyle?
Lynn.
Oh, Lynn.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Okay. We're going to deal with that correspondence for you. Again, I'm just sensitive of the time is getting on, and I want to be considerate of your time.
Yeah, okay.
So you're welcome to stay, but I just wanted to pause at this time.
I think I need to, but.
Okay. All right. Again, being considerate of your time.
Call me, Lynn, and we can get together and talk about it.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Small.
April 14th.
I don't really know if I need this, but
All right, thank you.
even for the next guy.
Thanks, Glenn.
Thank you very much.
Have a good evening.
All right. So we will accept that. But okay, let's find out where we are again. Can somebody help me there?
18-1,
18-1.
Committee of the Whole.
I've lost my paper. So we're going to move into the committee of the whole.
It looks like that.
No, I know.
Okay.
I'll second that.
That's great. Let's just take a minute because I am lost. I don't know where my papers went. That's April 4th. Oh, we can take a 5-minute recess. Thank you. I don't know. Did I? Oh, yeah. It's thoughtful. And are we paused, Mr. Prime? Welcome back. I feel like we should have had a commercial for a Kia or something. All right, so we've moved into the Committee Economic Development and Infrastructure Committee. 18.2, Operations and Infrastructure. This is a verbal update. You, Mr. Carmichael.
Hi. Yeah, so I'm sure everyone's forgotten about the potholes by now. But we're meeting tomorrow, Public Works and the roads contractor, and we're going to go over some specific areas and try and come up with a plan of attack. The TMX, reviewing the roads with them, is going to take place in May, but I'll get a hold of MJ soon here and set that up. So we have a few other projects on this list here. Extended flood mapping.
I think we just have to go to the road resurfacing.
Oh, road resurfacing, yeah. So that we're identifying those as well, and this with the potholes and the patching will be.
Okay, so that's going to be in concert, and you're meeting with the contractor tomorrow.
Yes.
Okay, I see.
Can I have a question about that? I noticed that some potholes holes have been filled or were filled, and now already you can see it coming out like around going to Bilo and around the hospital there.
Yes. They were filled when the weather was not good. They were kind of an emergency.
So they were considered as temporary fills?
Yes.
Okay.
So what goes in now will be something that'll last a bit longer?
Yeah, so we'll either do a program where we do hot mix patching or we'll use cold mix again, but we'll have the time and the weather, and we'll be able to cut it out and pack it properly.
Mr. Thomas, you had a comment?
I assure you, those potholes near Bilo and the clinic are two potholes I hope to see die forever in 2023.
Yeah, so
That's, yeah.
So just to reiterate is that we're grateful for the temporary attention to it, because they were getting to be quite big, and it was difficult with some of the snow. So thank you very much for that attention, and thank you for the signs that went up. It alerted people not only to be careful, but also gave good acknowledgement the fact that we were aware of it, and then to see the action taken so quickly after that was really appreciated. So, but it was temporary. So then you're on to the extended flood mapping, and this was a grant-funded project.
Yes. So currently we're scheduling the survey of the river and a field review, including low water inspection of the district dike that's been completed. So then they will do some 2D modeling, and so currently True staff has completed the low water inspections of the dike. Sorry, that was on there. Survey is scheduled to be completed within the next month. Completion of the project is anticipated spring of 2024.
I would like to add that with respect to surveys of bridge and other critical infrastructure security, a report will be coming forward highlighting some of the findings. And for example, we need to be careful as a municipality that we are doing those inspections on an annual basis, especially after we experience high flood waters in the freshet season, because that can, over time, compromise the structural integrity of several of our bridges in the district.
Great, thank you.
All right. So then
Hang on, Mr. Carmichael.
the lagoon desludging project is the current status of desludging of the lined aeration lagoon is a specialty service. True is in the process of finalizing a work program and procurement of the documents, or the procurement documents. True and the district staff have also engaged with the Ministry of Environment to notify them of the upcoming work. The desludging component of the project will be completed in 23, and disposal of the sludge may not occur within 23. It will depend on how the fast the liquid comes out of the tubes. So
Oh,
Councillor Breton, do you have a question on that one? Just on.
Sorry, my glasses.
Okay.
okay. And so then that brings us to the siphon planning and the Class B estimates and developments.
and we still have to meet with True, and they're putting together a cost estimate and scope of work for their, and we'll start on the design soon. The hospital lift station planning is underway. I believe we're currently completing the preliminary sizing portion of the project. This will account for development pressures within the catchment, as well as consideration for infrastructure lifespan compared to anticipated development timelines. The next step will be to prepare a draft summary memo of the sizing criteria for district review.
Yeah, Councillor Frizzle?
On that lift station, the planning, is that to make it so that it can accommodate any,
For future development.
for future development, so
Yes.
like the thing that's happening over on the, oh my God. Words are failing me. The building development on the other side, is that part of the reason you're planning that?
Definitely, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Hospital lift station is connected in series to the elementary school lift station, feeds into the hospital, pumps over to Robson, then gravity fed eventually down to the lagoon. With additional housing infrastructure scheduled to come online sometime in the future, we need to future proof so that all clients in that area are serviced accordingly, especially and perhaps most importantly, the hospital.
And the
so-
water leak detection study, we haven't started that yet, but now that the budget is passed, we'll be going, get a request for quotes together.
And I just have a question going back to the hospital lift station planning. Is so then when we talk about planning, what would that look like? Like just identifying the needs for it, and then we would move into next steps, or what's your thoughts there?
Planning would include identifying the potential density of the area that is developable and the engineers have to do calculations for what our current capacities are in the pipe, which will then feed into what changes needs to be made at the lift station itself in terms of size increases or pump changes, as an example.
And there may be some changes how we want it to function in the future. Right now, we have single lots that are directly fed into the force main, which is not a great practice. So hopefully we can correct that at this time as well.
Okay, great, thank you. And you feel that you're on track for 2023 then?
Yes.
And you're enthusiastic?
Yeah.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much. Any other questions for Mr. Carmichael? I do just want to draw your attention to the document from True. This was left on the table, and it just summarizes the active infrastructure and engineering projects. If I count, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So that's a so it's a lot, and I'm just bringing that up just to demonstrate what the team is doing, and also certainly as it relates to the budget that we've just passed. So it's robust and it's community in mind. Okay, moving on to Growing Communities Fund, Clearwater's contribution. Mr. Thomas, would you like to speak to this, or is this Director Klassen?
Sure, I'd like to turn your attention to page 175 of the package. So the district was successful in getting $1.5 million approximately from the $1 billion fund or surplus fund the province had. Yay. Congratulations to the district on
We
that.
need way more excitement.
Now comes the hard part, which is for council to identify if and how the funds are to be used. A matter of fact, the fund has to be used, but how the fund will be earmarked for different projects within the community. And I wanted to highlight some very important parameters around the usage of this fund. At the very bottom of the page, the last paragraph, the funding provided through the Growing Communities Fund should be limited to one-off costs needed to build required infrastructure and amenities rather than funding ongoing or operational activities. Capital only. Below that, you will see a number of areas where the funding can be used, include public water drinking supply, local portion affordable or attainable housing development, childcare, municipal regional capital projects, wastewater conveyance, for example, siphon, stormwater management, solid waste management. We do not have solid waste as a responsibility of the District of Clearwater. That's a regional district, so that will not apply here. Public safety, emergency response, emergency management equipment, facilities, etc. Not funded by senior levels of government. Local road improvements. This is one of the first times that local government have been allowed to use such funding for road improvements and upgrades. Sidewalk, curbing, lighting, active transportation amenities, improvements that facilitate transit service, natural hazard mitigation, park addition, maintenance upgrades, including washrooms, etc., recreation-related amenities, and feasibility studies are also included as part of this program. I'd also like to draw your attention to page 177 at the top. It says, as a condition of this funding, the grant must be placed in a segregated reserve fund established by bylaw, not policy, under section 188 of the Community Charter for the capital and planning purposes of the Growing Communities Fund. It also states, your local government will be required to report annually as part of our annual report process on how the fund is spent. And we would also be required to, it is also required to be part of our annual reporting through, annual financial reporting through the audit process.
Now, just on that point, I think, if I remember correctly, maybe this has changed since that meeting, but you had put it into our general reserves. We had received it, and so a bylaw will be forthcoming?
That is a requirement, and we will have to work on that in the future. This year, we have earmarked addressing our reserve structure overall, and so this would be an opportunity to correct that as well.
Okay, great, thank you. So is there a timeline on when we're supposed to have that bylaw done? They don't cite it in the letter, it's just, it's a forthcoming.
From what I can tell, there is no timeline at this time. In the financial plan that we just adopted, I did put it in the reserve because we didn't have.
Yeah,
this
we didn't have
outline.
anywhere, yeah.
However, I suspect that when and if we do have just thinking through it, because the bylaw doesn't, I'd have to see if we needed it.
The letter's only dated March 16th.
Yeah,
We're good.
We'll figure it out. Sorry.
We're good. Okay, all right. So that's just good to know sort of where that money's going and where it's being targeted for. So that's terrific. Any other comments on that, Mr. Thomas?
We just need to know what the committee's recommendation to council would be on how to use the fund. You have a charcuterie board of options available to you, including earmarking some for seed funding for various leveraging projects in the future. You could use it for any number of the infrastructure projects in our 5-year capital plan. It could be Dutch Lake line painting, Dutch Lake yellow flag iris, any project currently in the budget that is a capital nature could be applied to.
Director Klassen.
Thank you, CAO Thomas. We just adopted the plan and we have all our funding already figured out from that. So any changes to the funding would need an amendment. Just maybe if we go
Listen,
through the.
it's been 12 minutes, like
Exactly.
whatever. I just want to cite that wasn't council directing anything. That would be a you issue. However, that does raise a really good point. The fact that we do have this money, we don't have to. Our projects are funded. We do have a 5-year plan. We do have an infrastructure master plan. We have a variety. Council, do you have any comments on this to start with? Well, Councillor Bratton.
No, go ahead. No, go for
I
it.
had one question actually when you mentioned the Iris. That wouldn't work because that's an ongoing project, so it needs to be one time spent.
The Iris project?
Yeah.
That's not probably
we're
not
not
a
actually doing
capital
it,
in
but-
nature in that it's not tangible.
Oh.
It's a maintenance kind of fund
Okay.
or a maintenance kind of project.
Councillor Herring?
Yeah, it is super exciting. I think a thing to remember is $1.5 million, is not that much money for infrastructure. We have projects bigger than that on the budget already. So I think it's exciting, but it's going to be something I think we should give some thought about where we're going to have the biggest impact over the next while. Because I don't know what the estimate is these days on how much road that would pave, but it doesn't do us a Dun Lake, that's for sure.
So what I'm wondering is if perhaps we could direct staff to come back with a list of projects and as identified in the 2024, 2025, and we maybe start sourcing those, but we tie this 1.5 million into next year's budget. And we just earmark it for now with staff discussions, looking at what some of those priorities are. We've gone 2 times to bat for the siphon funding. We are going to do a new structure of that project. Even these funds could be leveraged for grants if possible. So I think by going slow, we may get somewhere fast. Well, if you go slow, you might get there fast. So we've got time, and just to factor that into our budget conversations that we're going to be starting a bit earlier. But we will need a staff report drawing out some of those key points of things that are priorities. I think that ties into what Councillor Herring's looking for is, what are our builders looking for? Will, development be coming online sooner? And so we have to attend to some different projects a bit quicker than what we had anticipated. Does that seem reasonable? Like we need a more of a holistic view of our community and where to thoughtfully leverage this. Mr. Carmichael, any questions on that?
No, I'm sure we can come up with a short list for you. We've got some ideas.
I think we've got lots in there already. I think what would be helpful for council, and I hope I'm not being out of turn, but just to be able to see that summary of projects. We've got that in the master plan, bring it forward to the next infrastructure, and then move it forward to government operations for consideration. Does that work for you, Ms. Klassen, or do you think there's another way?
That will work for me. I just want to remind you, you have a 5-year financial plan that has a lot of the projects
Exactly.
funded through grants, which we are not secured yet. So those would be the projects that would be a priority.
And for me, I think just lining those up according to our 5-year plan, also taking that external look about what we might be. I think, Mr. Thomas, you had brought forward to us earlier this year about doing a project up Clearwater Valley Road. This would fit in there. So having that wide lens as well as drawing from there, and just having a more thoughtful discussion. So we can bring that forward for fleshing out at the next infrastructure meeting. Motion to direct staff to have a report ready for the next infrastructure and economic development plan. But I can't make that, or I can. Yeah, I can.
Yeah.
So moved.
I'll second that.
Great. Any discussion on that? Staff, do you have all that you need on that? Okay, all right. All those in favor? Great. Motion carries. Thank you very much. Okay, Dutch Lake line painting and repainting, a verbal update and requesting confirmation of direction for 2023. You have before you a staff report. It's option number 3, the PDF. On your desk, I had left, because I was curious about what the Trails Task Force had said. And Mr. Prime kindly supplied us with copies of those minutes that they haven't yet been able to load, but I know that they're working through them. I just draw your attention to the minutes from Thursday, August the 4th, 2022, where there was the meeting notes, reline painting along the Old North Thompson Highway, and just some of the comments that the committee raised. And I thought that these were really thoughtful comments because the Trails Task Force has gone through tremendous effort in planning, what has connected our community in ways that we've never seen before. So some of those concerns raised were the width of the newly painted automobile lanes, which is narrow. Currently, it's 3.05 meters and not in accordance with Bylaw 111, which specifies 3.35 meters. Is that correct, Mr. Thomas? I couldn't find Bylaw 111 and find those specifics. I had a struggle with that.
So at the time of this meeting on August 4th, 2022, I believe there was an on-site visit with the Trails Task Force, including staff, where
Yeah.
the concerns listed here were raised. The bylaw has since been adjusted to reflect the reality of the comments just noted.
So which is the reality, 3.05 or 3.35?
3.05, I believe the bylaw was amended last year.
I'd be really interested in getting a copy of that bylaw. Is it? It was on the table to you? Councillor Matheson?
Shuffled it in somewhere random.
Okay. They also raised the lack of signage is confusing to users, safety concerns, vehicles parked close to the crossing area at the entrance of Dutch Lake, excluding rerouting truck and large traffic vehicle from the particular route would restrict transportation options, add to public confusion, and present additional public relations and enforcement issues. The excessive speed has been observed along the section of the Old North Thompson Highway adjacent to the beach. Need to address confusion, misunderstandings, and misinformation about the trail's funding and the processes within the community and on social media. That one, these trails have all been 100% grant funded in that area. Is that correct?
Yes, they have been 100% grant funding. However, the overages for Dutch Lake, which was about 16,000, was
Yes.
paid for through other resources.
That's right. Thank you very much. So I raise this is because I think that they articulate a lot of the confusion or a lot of the comments that we're receiving from the public. Is that correct, Council?
Yeah, it is.
So now we have a new season before us, and we have some plans. So I did speak to the chair, Heather McClellan, just the other day, and I asked her thoughts. And she completely agrees that it's confusing right now. And certainly as we've gone through our first winter, it became even more confusing. And now that the snow is cleared, what we see is for our $16,000 is maybe $4,000 left of line painting. And so to proceed with that over and over, that's a financial cost to the district for something that isn't making the world happy. Her thought was, would there be a way to look at bringing the trail down from the highway down through Bampton Park, and then the trail ending at the beginning of the parking lot, so that there would be a gate. You've seen them at some parks. They had them all over PEI. Basically, it says dismount, and you get off your bike and you walk through the gate. The trail would end, which would then allow for the parking lot, and then the trail would resume at the entrance to Dutch Lake. So that would take away some of that need for the trail up on the highway. And it would allow it would address the need for some more room for our vehicles, which we're hearing quite a bit from.
And then another component of actually getting that information put out to the public.
Certainly reviewing how we convey what's happening to the public. So that was a suggestion. So that would take away that trail on the highway there. That would give us a bit more space there. Essentially, what it would do is it would bring us back to where we once began.
Yeah,
Exactly.
pretty much.
Or even having a little bit wider for the parking, but less than it is now. But we need to widen the road, I think, the lining on the roads.
So with that, because what we did do based on some past recommendations is that there is no parking on the other side.
See that?
So that does, would that allow a little more room? So essentially we keep widening it over. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
No.
The road itself, there's no parking on going up the hill now, right?
Hatchery side.
Yeah. And then if the road actually extended itself into that walkway, then the road would be wider. Like now that there's, sorry, not a walkway, parking.
So you would just have a typical white line, but there wouldn't be any room for parking there because the white line would be there, and that would actually be a travel lane. So you could go to the 3.35 meters, if not a bit more, a bit wider there. So you've got your two driving lanes, and then you've got more space for a bit more parking lane. But we would remove any trail for bikes or walking.
And you're saying parking on the beach side?
Beach side, yep.
And so the trail pathway is going to go down into Bampton Park?
That was a suggestion, right? So it could be carried through there, but then it would end. Otherwise, you would need a way to continue it through the parking lot. The only way you could possibly do that is if you did cement barricades. Often people park right up against the bank. So you could do some barricades and create kind of a pathway there. I'm not an expert. I don't know if that would work or not. But for our purposes in moving forward and getting some line painting, I think that we just have to look at that. That is a very popular area for 4 months. And how we can facilitate that use and just still keep the flow of our community. Councillor Herring.
The initial grant, which was used to fund the program, what was that grant for?
That was a specific trail.
The grant used to fund the line painting at Dutch Lake was the Park Drive Trail grant. And a portion of it was applied to Steegs Hill and Dutch Lake.
Okay, I just asked because I just want to make sure that whatever we do has to uphold the spirit of that first grant, because I would hate to see that granting agency come back and say you spent a bunch of money with this intention and then you erased that intention from your solution, right? By, say, eliminating a section of trail. So if that grant was for community connection and we eliminate the connection piece, does that affect it?
Yeah,
right?
that's a
I
good
guess I just want to make sure we stay,
Within the spirit of
keep
it.
that in mind. Yeah.
Would we be eliminating the connection or making the connection more clear?
Well, that's a good question. And I mean, because if you go down into the park and then end the trail, that is it a connected trail?
Right.
Now, right? Because the trail's master plan would have it connected, right? You'd have an interruption in that connection. I just worry about that. I don't think it's a deal breaker. I don't think it would stop us from doing that. I'm just saying we maybe should consider that connection piece if that was part of the grant.
Can they do that?
Is this particular project complete?
The project has reached substantial completion. Total completion is not done. We will have to, over the next 60 to 90 days, start filing our final report for all those projects because the contractor has an obligation to complete them.
What is outstanding on that particular trail project?
I don't have that information off the top of my head, unfortunately. I will say that with respect to Councillor Herring's point and concern, there may very well be a financial impact to the district on this particular requirement because we are required to have the asset built for 5 years and maintain it for 5 years. That's written in the contract. That being said, I think there is ample evidence to indicate that there may be some public safety issues there, and continuing to make the same decision, irrespective of addressing or mitigating those concerns, will put the district at an even higher financial risk, potentially.
Supplemental, Councillor Herring?
Yeah, and for that reason, I wonder if removing the parking along that stretch and keeping the trail stays more in line with the grant, keeping the option with I like the option with the parallel parking south of the entryway down towards 37 East. I think there will be a little bit of pushback. Some people, especially those with small children and disabled people, like to park closer to the lake rather than having to walk back from the 37 East side. But I think that's stuff we can capture in the parking lot, right? Like every year I drive by that parking lot and it's full of Canada Dreams. And I'm like, not one of them should be parking there.
That's right.
You know? So there is some things I think we can work on there, but I really like the idea of keeping that trail intact just to make it easier. We've got the asset.
Oh, you're
The
still
trail is
connected.
there, but the parking is removed from that location.
Yeah.
That's my thought on it.
So also sometimes that what they have done in other areas is that they've had the parking, which is where it used to be along the bank, and then there's a pathway beside the parking.
Yeah. I think
That is not best practice because it actually puts users of the trails at significant risk because a vehicle has to cross that pathway to park and the same to go back into live traffic.
So you've just finished my sentence, so thanks. But I just did want to point out that, that is what other communities do and why we've opted not to. It is on the hill and it is on quite a high recreation area.
Isn't that currently actually what was originally done when they revamped that, put the painting of the lines in?
Opposite. Parking was on the...
outside and the path was on the inside.
Yeah, I didn't get that. It wasn't conveyed very well.
This is a great opportunity to take input and amend.
Yep.
But we do need to set it. So we have a suggestion from Councillor Herring that we do not have any parking on that side, and we move to parallel parking. It would also put some urgency on addressing parking at 37 East. Now I know that staff has expressed that they're not sure where to go with that. We have asked to go back to some secondary plans with that. I don't know if you have an update on where that might be.
I know it's being worked on. I don't have an update at this point.
Okay. I think that one of the things that we had asked for was just some simplicity in that design, where there'd just be a gravel with some cement places to indicate parking. Would that be ready for this year or not? So that is one suggestion. And the other suggestion, but I think it would be dependent on the grant, is if we could bring the trail through Bampton Park and end it until we have a better solution. And then pick it up. And so they basically would have to walk through the parking lot. I'm not sure if that, meets it.
I think it would do it already.
Mr. Thomas?
I believe there may be two important decisions for the committee to recommend to council. One, is the committee going to be recommending that council direct staff to reinstate what was done last year? That's the first point. If the answer is yes, that's easy. We can contract the line painters to do that. If the answer is no, is there a different direction council would like to go in terms of the three options presented, or does council want a fourth option developed?
So let's go with the first question. Council, would you like to resume what was there last year?
No.
All right. So we will not be moving forward with what happened last year.
Please.
We have three options before us. Do any of those options would you like to act on, or would you like to direct staff to come back with a fourth option?
I kind of like the combination.
Director Klassen, any insights? Oh no, I was hoping for something. Okay. So we do have the three there. I am curious about at the bottom of those plans, there seems to be what's typical and what's not. So Councillor Herring, what page are you on right there? We're on.
This one is 189, I believe. Doesn't have an actual number on it. It's after 188.
So, and it's very small, so it's hard to see. But when we go onto the Old North Thompson Highway paint line marking plan option 3 details, in that small little diagram, it looks like there's some different options and different widths that are given. And it seems like, and it says typical paint marking section. And I didn't understand what typical paint marking section meant. And then it's so small that I can't see what the widths are there.
Option 3 diagram?
That was just an example. On each page, they've got. You just see here.
Got option 1 and option 2.
I got 1 and 1 and 1 and 1.
So this is what I'm looking at here. Is like the typical paint marking section, and it's different than what we have.
That's what it is right now.
I can't see. That's go, Mr. Thomas. Are you bringing me a magnifying glass?
Yeah.
So the options are listed up here. Option 3. Flip through, you'll find options are listed.
Oh, there we, okay. Oh, I see.
Oh, don't even
I've
try.
seen
Or,
those.
Option 3?
Free gates.
1?
Option 3.
Oh, yes. I did
Back
see
a
that.
page, I see.
okay.
I see that. Yep.
So I also want to say, so I went through the Trails Master Plan, and in it, they have 0.5 meter gravel with a 3 meter two-way shared bike trail, 0.5 meters of gravel, and then they get into 3.5 meters traffic, 3.5 meters traffic. Where is that utilized?
I'm not sure where it's utilized, but what's driving the Dutch Lake Line painting is not the Trails Master Plan exclusively. It's primarily Bylaw 111, which is the highway standards bylaw that the district has with 78 different road cross sections.
So with and again, I could not find that. So and does that have to do with the fact that that road was then designated as residential? Is that why we've got this 3.05?
I think it's identified as either collector or actually, let's pull up the bylaw. One sec.
Yeah, I'd love to see the bylaw because I could not find that, and I'm fascinated.
I thought we were switched to 3.35
Thank you.
myself.
Yeah.
Numbers.
I think to be I don't know if this is helpful, Mr. Thomas, but I think that we have all agreed that the traveling for vehicles is too narrow.
Yes.
Yes.
Most definitely.
We're just pulling it up.
And I just need a time check too.
8:39.
So do we need a motion to extend the meeting?
Yes, we will.
Can we do that while?
I think you may have time to come out of the committee.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then you may be able to do that.
Okay. Okay.
So these are examples of what a road cross section would look like. Well, a pathway anyways. Keep going now.
That's a trail.
Those are the standards that the district has adopted as trails. So for example, we have, keep going.
I love the vegetation. Why didn't they use those vehicles?
WV20.
So those are all 3.35 that we've just scrolled through.
Yeah, WV20. That's need more carrots.
We're looking for a specific one.
I thought you liked looking at pictures.
Oh, there, that's 3.05. That one did say that.
parking one side.
That's the one, I think.
Oh, is it? No, that's still 3.35. There. No? Are we getting closer?
That was 2 bike lanes.
So it's bike lanes on both sides. Parking. We don't want that.
Well, it's okay. I'm feeling better because I could not find it. So,
That's a small lane.
so you wanted the amendment? Would that be the 2018 amendment or later than that?
No, it was passed in 2022, the amendment. We can't immediately identify the specific cross-section that the pathway was based on at this very moment, but it would have come from one of those options in this bylaw. And the amendment that was done in 2022 was to address the concern noted in the document from the Trails Task Force.
Yeah, but the document from so you're saying we would have amended it when? So 2022. So their minutes, basically, they cite that the line painting wasn't done. So that's what the note says, that that it was painted to 3.05, but it seemed that the Trails Task Force felt that the bylaw should be 3.35.
No, the bylaw at the time was calling for 3.35. The work that was done was 3.05, and we needed to make sure what was done was actually in compliance with the bylaw to reduce risk to the district.
Right, but if I'm understanding that, it sounds like the lines weren't painted correctly.
The lines were painted according to the drawings approved by the task force and by the District of Clearwater.
Ah.
So it was not an issue on the contractor's part, it was an issue on error in design. That
Councillor Herring.
was approved.
And my understanding of the error in design was it was based on we were classifying that road differently than the use that we actually see, right? Like I think I can't remember if it was collector or arterial or which one, but that's the difference between the 3.35 and the 3.05. So we had to move it to the other designation, is my understanding. And I think that in part was a misunderstanding of just what exactly that road was classified as before when the project was launched. I think it looked different on the ground than people expected in the end.
And I think also too, at the time, we weren't realizing how much truck traffic was going to go through there because of the pipeline, people that were here. There was,
Well, just even regular logging trucks.
yeah, and the logging
Yep.
trucks.
Traffic.
I don't
CN
know.
trucks.
Pipeline.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got that. We can't necessarily find that, but I think we've all agreed that the 3.05 doesn't work. So we've got some work ahead of us. It is an option to direct staff to come back with a fourth option that does not look like last year.
I like the incorporation.
So, Councillor Herring, you have something to add there?
No, I think my opinion is still that we go with the option that just removes the parking in front of Dudley Beach.
that
and
is
goes with the
option number-
parallel. I believe that is option 1. Let me double check that though. There's one that's parallel and one that's angle, and that's
Yeah, that's
Mr. Prime, could I ask you if it's possible is just to switch us over
Option
to the
one,
agenda
parallel.
and look at option 1 on the screen, that we're all talking about the same.
one section. Where are Here we are.
The Camry.
So yeah, it would keep the pathway coming down in front of the parking lot in option 1, and then it would be parallel parking between the beach parking lot and 37 East.
Yeah, it'd be parallel.
Yeah. So, just drive
That's why
straight in.
we're gonna pull it up here.
No, the parking would be taken away in front of the beach on the hill. But yeah, between there and 37 East, the parking would remain on the right-hand side with the pathway on the far side of it, I guess.
I like a combination of yours and Shelley's, or the recommendation from the Trails.
So Acting Mayor Sim, this is option 1 here in front of you. Would you like me to zoom in?
If
on
you
any
can
of
just
these?
zoom it in particular to where we would be eliminating. And I'm going to say that next time we ever go through something like this, larger images would be really helpful. It looks so different from when you see it on this itty bitty piece of paper to when you see it and people yell. So if I'm reading this correctly, this is currently where people normally park along here, or where they used to park. In front of the lake, right? This is in front of the lake. Is this right?
Correct. That is the parking lot for Dutch Lake.
This is the parking lot. This is the road, and this is where people have typically parked.
Correct.
Okay. So Councillor Herring is suggesting that we take away that parking and we only do a bike path there. Okay? And then it would just be 2 lanes of traffic and no parking on the other side. So, in actual theory, this is the extended part. Okay, so here's where the, oh, well, there's the amendment. Just so that's switch it. Funny how it just drops out. Okay, so now that we see it, so here's the parking lot right now.
Yeah.
Okay, so one of the, and then the entrance is right here. Yeah. Right? So one of the comments that had come back from the Trails Task Force is that if people park too close here, it created some danger
Good.
zones.
Sightline issues with that, for sure.
Right?
Yeah.
So they were suggesting no parking there. And then, would you have any parking here? Or just say no parking at all?
That would
I don't think-
just be pathway.
Just a pathway.
It's going to be more issues when the hill decides to give away too.
think
If
if we
down the road, I think we should just leave parking off that
I
hill
think
altogether.
the only way to keep it so it's
Unless you're gonna
clearly and concise is to cut the parking off. If we were to have any parking at all as a portion, people will start making their own assumptions of where they can extend that to. And you'll inevitably get people parking up to Clearwater Stop, right? Instead of the other direction.
Okay, and so by eliminating that, you're gonna be eliminating about 10 cars plus anything.
I'll be screaming because I like to park there.
Yeah, it's a popular spot for sure, but I'd say more like 5 cars there. You can't fit 10 cars.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, you can.
Oh, yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
We're tight, yeah.
And then also on the other side. So what we're looking at is, no, Councillor Frizzle?
You're eliminating the 10 vehicles, but you're also making the driving safer
Yes.
and making more people happy. And so there's got to be some sacrifices, I'm sorry, but I think if we're going to eliminate some parking there, we need to eliminate all the parking on that area.
And maybe a solution for making people happy like that is reevaluating who is parking in that parking lot at
We
Dutch
could
Lake.
make that a designated parking for,
Handicapped
Handicapped
seniors,
seniors.
parents with young children, right? And then
No
take out
RVs.
no RVs, nobody who's spending the full day at the beach and doing a barbecue on the back of their tailgate. Like that's better for 37 East, you know? Get them out of that core area and have kind of the swimming lessons family area.
I also just want to point out that there are some people there who are bringing down paddle boards and are bringing down kayaks. And you've got a variety of ages and mobility. And so to be carrying that from 37 East,
we
if
could have a
they get
loading
there.
That's
zone, unloading zone.
Well, you could. I'm going to just note that I've always been impressed with the age range of people who are out on that lake. Mr. Prime.
Yes, there is currently signs up there that say no RV parking, and as we I'm sure witnessed last year, that wasn't really particularly followed. So we'd really have to look at how bylaw can practically enforce those restrictions on parking.
A blow-up doll, no RV parking with an arrow. So we are discussing removing the parking in its entirety, utilizing 37 East more effectively, creating those pathways.
And
Councillor Herring?
sorry, not in its entirety, only in its entirety from like the intersection of there up north towards the main highway. The parking from Dutch Lake to 37 East along the side of the road would remain the same. So there still would be parallel parking, just once you pass the Dutch Lake Beach entrance rather than on the hill before it.
Okay. Now, as long as we're starting from scratch, although we do have no parking on the other side, would, if we remove the no parking, now that we've got some extra space, would we consider having parking on that other side?
No, that makes it different.
Yeah,
It's important that we exhaust all.
Yeah, I don't know, actually.
Councillor McKenzie?
Oh, just think just what you got to think of just for a parking area like this. So you're saying eliminating the lakeside on the hill. Even there is no signs on the our well side. There's
Hatchery side, there
currently
are currently
parking.
there is no
There
parking.
Currently is. So if we're eliminating that side, no parking from say the Bampton Park sign down to the entrance. Keep that sight line open. Parallel parking from there beyond. I'm not seeing a problem with having parking on the hill on the other side. I just don't like it on the lakeside.
I have concern over the parallel parking is that when people move out, they're going to be moving into that other lane of traffic. I can't envision there being enough space, but I could be wrong.
sorry, and you're referring to the
Oh,
side.
sorry, is it parallel or is it angle parking that? It's just parallel. Okay, so you're getting what? How many cars there?
Well,
Past
there's
there.
quite a few that can
Yeah.
fit along there. They can almost double up. Some if they know someone, they can almost double side by side. But
Yeah, because that would block the
They're
pathway.
going to block the
And the
pathway.
cost for option number 1?
Was the lightest, I believe it.
Middle of the bag. One
I have
one-
option number 1 is $152,000.
Yeah, 152 on that.
never mind. Don't.
At Class B in 2022 figures.
Oh yeah.
Well, nothing's got more expensive since then, right? So we're probably good.
So just to be clear. Mr. Thomas, to take you up on your offer of to go back for an option number 4, which might be returning things, or even looking at ending the trail there, as long as it fulfills our grant obligation. What's your thoughts on that?
Council could certainly do that. I think there may be value in having council do a walk, a physical site visit with engineers and with district staff to explore the 3 options as presented in September last year and see what is practical and feasible, because there are some constraints. The good thing is the district has a wide right of way because it's an old highway. So you do have room to play with. The question is cost and the question is timing.
Yeah, and I think nobody wants to go into this season with some uncertainty, for sure. And I think the other thing that, for me, I would like to do is actually do that walkthrough with the Trails Task Force, because I feel that there was a lot of good work that was done, and I wouldn't want to come to this part of the project and not have them part of it. I thought their comments, from the August 4th were really, they captured everything.
So can we do that in a quick time frame? Because realistically, we only have.
But I think the other thing is that would we ever consider an option for $640,000, which is a little less than 1/3 of the money that we've just been gifted, right? So I think that we can, realistically, we can take that off.
Like it till I see the price tag on it.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's not happening.
And then option number 2 was $640,000. Or sorry, option 1 was 152. Option 2 was 640, and option 3 was how much?
31 didn't change, I
But
believe.
that's just to put signs up and keep everything the way it is.
Oh, okay. So option number 4 would be how much would it be? Was
The way it was being parking along that hill and no pathway.
well, we could look at that. That could be a 4th option to explore.
To amalgamate the two.
So the pathway going to Bampton Park
Yep.
is an option in 4. I definitely want to see what the grant implications.
No,
of
no,
that
I'm
would be.
I'm saying with you, like your suggestion would be option number 4.
I'm pro option number 1.
Okay,
is
so
where I'm leaning, but I think option 4 is
for 152,000.
yes, correct.
Okay, you're good with that.
That's what I'm leaning towards.
Okay, and your suggestion of funding it would be from where?
That's a good question. I don't have an answer for that.
Okay.
But frankly,
That sounds like Wayne. I just want a tractor.
yeah.
I said, well, where's that coming from? I don't know. I just want one.
Well, with something we have to notice too in these quotes is they have a cost associated with removal of lines. We don't have to do that. They're gone.
Well, sort of, yeah.
Some of the old ones are still
A
there.
little bit.
that
Okay,
they-
let's tidy this up. Let's get some direction. Let's make some decisions here. So I have Councillor Herring who is leaning towards option number 1. So we have option. I think we've said that we are not keen to go with option number 2. And I don't think that we want to go with option 3, which would bring us to the consideration of an option 4 and meeting with the engineers, the Trails Task Force, and seeing what can be developed. So
Yeah,
I need a motion.
I think we should walk.
Can we make a motion to make a 4?
You can make a motion to direct staff,
Make a
because we had, or if you make a motion to, move forward on option number 1.
can we make a motion that incorporates option number 1 and coming back with an option 4? Can you do this together? No.
Well, I think
Still
that's what-
options at that point, right? Like, so we can keep option 1 on the table, take option
Yes.
2 off, and come up with the replacement option.
See, there, you have it.
But
Okay.
I don't know how everyone else feels about that.
Councillor
I
Frizzle?
like the idea of keeping option 1 up here, option 4, but have the walkthrough with the Trails Task Force with these ideas in mind. Because now we have a better idea of what we actually want.
With the measuring tape.
With the measuring tape, the whole bit, and then we can say, okay, yes, option 1 works, or option 4 works, whatever.
Yep.
But I think we need to do that walkthrough. I think we I think are very visual people, and we have to see it.
Yeah, with all of us,
Okay,
not just.
so I'd like
half.
to entertain a motion on that, if somebody could make that, please.
I would like to move that staff, poor staff,
No, this is
You
important.
thought you were going to sleep this month? No.
move forward on setting up a meeting with the Trails Task Force and Council to
And engineer.
do a walkabout on the highway to ascertain which would be the best way to move forward on the line painting for the Dutch Lake Road. That makes sense?
You have not included engineers in on that? Is that important to you? Oh, okay, great. I didn't know
put
how
that
far
in
we had
the
to
motion.
direct.
Yeah.
All right. I have a
I knew
motion
that.
for Councillor Frizzle. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Councillor McKenzie. Discussion on the motion. Councillor Herring, do you have anything to say?
Nope.
Councillor Bratton?
No, I like that.
Okay. All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Mr. Thomas, how quickly do you think that meeting could be put together?
I don't have any idea. I know the current slate of infrastructure stuff will need to be shifted, so you're probably looking at a couple of weeks here.
Do you think we could do it sooner than that because people are going to start using that Dutch Lake, or can we put out communication?
I think the communication that will go out will be what council or the committee discussed earlier, which is the roads effectively are going to go back to what they were, because we still have to develop option 4, bring back option 1, 2, 3, and 4 to council.
Well, do we
along
need to
with-
make a motion right now that option number 640,000 is off the table?
Yeah.
It's not necessary because you won't necessarily pick that for implementation.
Okay,
But we will bring back all the options that have been developed, so you have a complete package. Council would also have to have a discussion about how whichever option it chooses will be funded. Council did adopt its budget tonight and did set aside, I believe, $50,000 for plans and engineers and those sort of processes. But we did not budget for making structural changes to Dutch Lake for this year. So that would require an amendment. How we fund it could be infrastructure, growing communities funds, or other pots of funding.
so the other consideration for a meeting is and please keep in mind my bumper sticker is changes along our instant gratification takes too long. So
That was your original one.
yeah, I'm adopting it now. I'm wondering, because I think that there's only 4 members of the Trails Task Force left, is if it's possible to even consider just meeting council and the Trails Task Force at the lake and doing that initial and just getting the theory and some constructs there, landing on something, and then involving the engineer so the engineer wouldn't have to come out more than once.
I would, it could be done, not
Yeah.
a problem. I would caution because we would be exposing ourselves to running with ideas that may be technologically more expensive or more challenging. For example, designing a pathway from the roadway down to Bampton Park area will require geotechnical because you're cutting into a slope. That adds tremendous cost to our project immediately. So I would be very reticent to recommend a meeting without the engineers who can guide that conversation a little bit more concise.
Okay, and I think just because of the urgency, I mean, I would really hope for within the next 2 weeks. Yeah, go ahead,
Could
Councillor
we
Fisher.
have it at the Trails Task Force Day, May 2nd? That's 2 weeks?
That depends on the schedules.
yeah.
I will make the request.
But it-
I think we've also got a council meeting that afternoon, so it would flow into it.
Field trip.
I'm also scheduled to be away from the 27th.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, but I
7th of
think that
April?
Mr. Mayor has always been your alternate on this particular project, so would that be feasible?
We will certainly have
Great.
the Director of Operations look into that.
Okay. I think that's a tremendous suggestion, and I think that this would be an important communication piece to the public as well, that we're going to be, moving forward and meeting with it.
And I just want to let you know the time is 9:05.
Oh, 9:05.
Unless my watch is fast.
We'll need to make the motion after we come out of the committee of the whole.
Okay, we're going to move to the Dutch Lake Yellow Flag Iris, the request for recommendation of the committee. In the minutes of the last meeting, Mr. Thomas asked the presenter how much would this cost. The answer was provided $30,000 a year. To do this, typically the district has been paying $5,000 a year. We've paid that twice.
$2,500.
Did we
annually.
match that with somebody else, the TNRD, or has it just
No.
been 2,500?
$2,500 from the district.
Right. So, request for recommendation. We have just passed the budget. We did not have $30,000 slated in there. That's just for comment.
So what do you do about that?
So, to me, it's not in the budget. To me, it is that it is something that is referred to the next budget process, and a business case is made. We can, but I don't see it as something that we can do this year.
That's right.
I'm with you on that.
Councillor Frizzle.
I agree. There's nothing we can do this year, but I would really like to know that there's owner
Yeah. Involvement.
involvement and buy-in. If we have people that don't have buy-in and they go and say they don't want it at their place, then how good of a job are we doing? Because it's not being attacked throughout the whole lake. So I would like to know where we stand with the owners around the lake, And once we know that, then we can talk about that in the next budget. Good point.
What was the $2,500 for? I have to think that it was part of something bigger, but perhaps somebody can refresh my memory.
It was to go directly towards Dr. Tarasov's team for performing the work, to help her get leveraging funds for other grants. And the district was also providing in-kind contribution by way of staff time.
Okay, I think that's where I landed there. That makes sense. And would that $2,500 still be helpful for this year? Like, is something better than nothing?
That's a
Well, I wasn't at the meeting, and it wasn't in the minutes, so I don't know. Like, did she mention that, or?
the if council hopes for an improved experience or improved result, then greater investments is required, or status quo will continue.
I think it was $30,000 for over the next 5 years per year is what they were looking at
Right, okay.
to
All right.
make a dent into things. This is not going to eradicate anything by any means, but in the meantime, looking into conveyor belts, so on and so forth, pond liners, if there was any access we had to that they could start
Okay.
carry on from what they've done.
And
All
she
right.
was talking a 15-year project. This is not going to be happening overnight.
Okay, so we don't have the $30,000 in this budget. It is a case study that could be presented. Mr. Thomas, what kind of a motion would you like? It seems that we're going to defer it to the budget process.
That sounds like a great motion.
Okay, great. I move that we defer the yellow iris to the budget process for 2024.
Can you make a motion? Okay.
Great, seconded by Councillor Frizzle. Discussion? All in favor? Great.
Oh, yeah, we're in.
Yeah. Okay, and there is a recommendation that council rise from the committee of the whole. Great. All right, thank you. And now we need a motion to extend the meeting. Is that right, Mr. Prime? Okay, I would entertain a motion to extend the meeting.
Second it.
Great. All in favor? Thank you very much. We're now moving into correspondence. BC Lyme Awareness, page 210 to 211. Any comment there?
Well, I don't see us doing any green lights, but we should put it out on our
Website?
and whatnot. and
Okay, so you'd like
mechanisms.
communication?
Yes, please.
Motion to direct staff to make a communication piece on that then? Councillor McKenzie?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to direct staff to update our district website and put out communication in regards to BC Lyme awareness.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Bratton, any discussion on that? Great, all in favor? Motion carried. Next is consultation on cannabis production facilities in the ALR.
What was the response that was required?
That's
It's
I
under correspondence. So, Mr. Thomas, what kind of response would they
I
like
didn't
from us?
understand that.
Or can it be just a motion to receive?
It was either a motion to receive or as well, they were looking for any input. So it was just a matter of if mayor and council had any input. If none, we can move on.
Have we had any requests from Clearwater to do that?
None that I'm aware of.
And are they accepting comments from the public as well on this?
We're unsure.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right. So a motion, we can actually have action on this, or a motion to receive.
Motion to receive.
Motion received.
Okay. That motion was made by Councillor Frizzle, seconded by Councillor Herring. I don't see any discussion on that. All in favor? Terrific. Okay. Notice of motion. I had a misunderstanding, so that is going to come next time. And now we move to the best part, is public. Annabelle, trooper. Any comments? Thanks for staying.
You're welcome. I'm glad there's gonna be a Saturday bus from May to September. And another thing, we've moved here as a family April of 1977. And the line painting was never done. Why is it now? Is it because Clearwater is growing? I'm not only frustrated with it, my best friend is, there's a lot of people saying it's a bunch of baloney,
Yeah.
and I'm being polite.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
What's the reason?
For line painting?
Yes, it was never like that, Shelley.
Oh, no. I think we've just, at this meeting, we've just voted that it will not go back to that next year. But are you talking about still having lines on the road?
No. We moved here in April of 1977. We never had a problem. Now the line painting's happening.
I think I can answer that.
Oh, good,
And
thank
it
you.
was just because essentially those trails grants are to connect different parts of our community. So it was about getting the trails in there. The line painting kind of followed a little bit of that process. And so some of the lines had to change. But yeah, the way it turned out, nobody's happy, that's for sure. I think we're trying to find some way around it.
Like I said it quite a while ago, I do not want to be walking up there and have an accident happen. Like people opening doors and kids running and everything.
Yeah,
I
and
don't-
that's exactly what we just were deliberating. So we echo your thoughts. So thank you very much. In the spirit of the letter that Mr. Small had left, he has referred to in-town trails for Clearwater. I'll share some of the highlights. He was hoping for a good trail starting from the info center, staying on that side of the highway down past Dutch Lake to the Clearwater Bridge. That would, I believe, going through that big dip. And there's reasons for that, is that the snow going over. So that's the lake side as you come down. So the Trails Task Force had actually addressed why some of that wasn't feasible there. It seems to make sense, except when you look at how the rest of the world works. He was disappointed to see the most recent bike trail blacktopped along the top bank from Bilo to the Wells Gray Hotel. That was not part of the long-range plans. I'm hoping that he's aware that that was a grant money. And it seemed to promote more crossing at the main highway when we have a pedestrian crossing at the roundabout. He's happy with the bike trails along Park Drive to the hospital. And he shares a lot of community thought about the Mickey Mouse trail markings beside Dutch Lake. And he's keen on the opportunity to construct a first-class bike trail and he would like to see some cooperation of the owners, and a proper safe hill has to be separate from the car highway. And by that, we have forwarded his letter on to Councillor Frizzle, who is the Trails Task Force representative, and I pass that to you. And with that, we have a moment to move into in camera. We will take a 5-minute break.
Can I get someone to move that, please?
Thank you.
Go in camera. Sorry, Councillor Herring, could you read the recommendation for me?
Yep. Yeah, thanks, Annabelle.
Make the recommendation that the meeting be closed to the public between section 9.1 A, E, and K. Would be in charge to discuss matters related to aviation, discussion respecting proposed efficient municipal service, the preliminary stages, and that the review of council could reasonably be expected to harm the interests of the municipality or public. And L as well,
What we added to the agenda, to the in-camera? A, E, and L.
A&E was.
I added it when I did. So Councillor Herring added one, and then I added one.
Right, and my records show A and E.
Oh,
was
and you
added.
added K?
I said A and you said A.
That's correct.
That is correct.
And L.
I wrote A&E at the beginning, like I said.
Good thing it's recorded. That's, yes. So, yep. Oh, well. Yep. I do.
Motion's moved. Would anyone like to second that?
Second that.
Great. All those in favor? Great. 5 minutes.
I thought it would be a good idea, and it's really backfired even for me when I thought it was going to work.